I need you to hear me out on this one, because we need to have a real conversation about forgiveness. And I'm not talking about that surface level stuff where you just say, it's fine and move on. I'm talking about the kind of forgiveness that actually changes your life, that actually frees you, but also the kind that has boundaries. Because yes, forgiveness has limits. See, here's what nobody tells you. Forgiveness is not about letting people walk all over you. It's not about being a doormat. It's not about pretending something didn't hurt when it absolutely destroyed you. But what it is about is understanding when to offer it, before that hurt turns into something that eats you alive from the inside out. Before resentment hardens in your chest like concrete and you can't even breathe properly anymore. So in this video, I'm breaking down exactly how to navigate forgiveness in a way that protects your peace, but doesn't turn you bitter. Let's get into it. Part 1. Understanding what forgiveness actually is. I think a lot of us have the wrong idea. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. Let me say that again for the people in the back. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. You can forgive somebody and never speak to them again. You can forgive somebody and still remove them from your life completely. Forgiveness is about you, not them. I need you to really sit with that for a second, because society has fed us this lie that if you truly forgive someone, you have to welcome them back with open arms. That if you truly forgive someone, everything goes back to normal. That if you truly forgive someone, you trust them again immediately. None of that is true. Forgiveness does not require you to put yourself back in harm's way. It does not require you to act like nothing happened. It does not require you to give someone another opportunity to devastate you. When you hold on to resentment, when you hold on to anger, when you replay what they did to you over and over in your mind, like it's a movie you can't turn off, who's suffering? Not them. They're out here living their life, probably not even thinking about what they did to you. But you're carrying that weight every single day. You're carrying them on your back rent-free in your mind, and that's exhausting. Think about it. You wake up, and within minutes, you're thinking about what they did. You're in the shower rehearsing arguments you'll never have. You're driving to work getting angry all over again about something that happened months ago, years ago even. You see something that reminds you of them, and your whole mood shifts. You're at dinner with friends and someone says something that triggers the memory and suddenly you're not even present anymore because you're back in that moment, feeling all those feelings again. That's what unforgiveness does to you. It keeps you trapped in a moment that already passed. It gives someone who hurt you continued access to your emotional state, even when they're nowhere near you. And the worst part? They don't even know. They're not losing sleep over it. They're not replaying it. They've moved on. But you haven't. And that's the prison that resentment builds. Forgiveness is you deciding that you're not going to let what they did control your life anymore. It's you deciding that your peace is more valuable than your anger. And here's the thing. That doesn't mean what they did was okay. It doesn't erase the hurt. It doesn't make you best friends again. It just means you're choosing to release the grip that situation has on your heart. You're choosing to stop giving them power over your present moment. You're choosing to stop allowing something that happened in the past to dictate your mood today, tomorrow, next week. You're taking your power back, and that's what forgiveness really is. It's a reclaiming. It's you saying, you hurt me, that was real, but I'm not going to let that hurt define the rest of my life. And I want to be clear about something else too. Forgiveness doesn't happen in one moment. It's not like you wake up one day and decide, okay, I forgive them, and it's done. Sometimes, you have to forgive the same person for the same thing multiple times in your own heart. You forgive them today, and tomorrow you wake up angry again, so you have to choose forgiveness again. That's normal, that's part of the process. Don't beat yourself up because forgiveness isn't linear. But here's where it gets tricky, and this is what we really need to talk about. Because yes, you should forgive for your own peace. But forgiveness without boundaries is just self-destruction with a pretty name. You cannot keep forgiving the same person for the same thing over and over while they continue to hurt you and call that growth. That's not forgiveness at that point, that's denial. That's you lying to yourself about what's happening. That's you using the word forgiveness to avoid the harder truth, which is that this person is still actively harming you and you're allowing it. There's a massive difference between forgiving someone in your heart while they're no longer in your life and forgiving someone who's still in your life doing the exact same thing they did before. One is freedom, the other is captivity disguised as grace. Part 2. Recognizing when resentment is building. Resentment doesn't just show up overnight. It builds slowly, like rust on metal. And by the time you notice it, it's already done so much damage. It starts small. Maybe they cancel plans and you tell yourself it's fine, they were probably busy. Then they do it again and again. And each time, you swallow it, you smile, you say no worries, we'll reschedule. But inside, you're filing it away. You're making mental notes. And one day, seemingly out of nowhere, you explode over something tiny. And they're standing there confused like, why are you so mad about this one thing? But it's not about that one thing. It's about the 20 things before it that you pretended didn't bother you. Here's how you know resentment is building. You start keeping score. You remember every single thing they did wrong, like you're writing a dissertation on their failures. You bring up stuff from years ago in arguments because you never actually dealt with it. You feel your chest get tight when their name comes up in conversation. You avoid them or you're cold to them. And when people ask what's wrong, you say nothing, but your whole energy says everything. You stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. Everything they do becomes suspicious. They could say, "Good morning," and you're analyzing their tone, wondering what they really meant by that. You interpret everything they do in the worst possible light because you've collected so much evidence against them that now you're just waiting for them to mess up again so you can add it to the list. And here's another sign. You stop communicating honestly. Someone asks you to do something, and instead of saying no or expressing how you really feel, you say yes with your mouth, but no with your attitude. You become passive-aggressive because you're too resentful to be direct but too hurt to let it go. You make little comments, throw little jabs, hoping they'll pick up on your displeasure without you having to actually say it out loud. That right there, that's resentment hardening. And once it hardens, it becomes so much harder to forgive. It's like trying to bend steel. Technically possible, but it takes so much more heat and pressure to change it. When resentment is fresh, when it's still soft, you can work through it with a conversation. You can say, "Hey, when you did this, it hurt me, and there's still room for repair." But when resentment has been building for months or years, now you need therapy. Now you need time apart. Now you need major intervention because the damage runs deep. The roots have spread everywhere. I see this all the time, especially with women. We taught to be understanding, to be patient, to give people grace, and those are beautiful qualities, don't get me wrong. But sometimes we give grace when we should be giving consequences. We stay patient when we should be walking away. We keep understanding when what we really need to understand is that this person is not good for us. We're taught that speaking up is being difficult, that having standards is being demanding, that protecting ourselves is being mean. So we swallow it. We excuse it. We justify it. Well, they had a hard childhood. Well, they're going through a lot right now. Well, that's just how they are. And every time we make an excuse for behavior that hurts us, we're choosing them over ourselves. We're saying their comfort is more important than our pain. And listen, I get it. It feels easier in the moment to just let it slide. Confrontation is uncomfortable. Setting boundaries is hard. Telling someone they hurt you is vulnerable and scary. But you know what's harder? Living with years of accumulated resentment. Waking up one day and realizing you don't even like the person you've become because you're so bitter and angry all the time. And then 5 years later, we're bitter. We're angry at ourselves for staying so long. We're angry at them for taking advantage. We're just angry, period. And that anger, it doesn't just affect that one relationship. It seeps into everything. It affects how you show up in new relationships, how you trust people, how you see yourself. You meet someone new and they're genuinely good to you, but you can't receive it because you're still carrying resentment from the last person. You push them away or test them constantly because your resentment has made you suspicious of everyone. You become the kind of person who says, all men are trash, or you can't trust anybody. Not because it's true, but because you never dealt with the specific person who hurt you. So now everybody has to pay for it. Or worse, you become so used to being treated poorly that when someone treats you well, it feels foreign. It feels wrong. It feels like they must want something or they're just pretending. Your resentment has literally rewired your brain to expect mistreatment. And now you can't even recognize genuine love and respect when it shows up. So you have to catch resentment while it's still soft. You have to address things when they're still fresh, when forgiveness is still accessible, before that hurt calcifies into something permanent. That means having uncomfortable conversations early. That means saying, "That hurt me the first time, not the 15th time." That means recognizing when something bothers you and not lying to yourself about it being fine when it's not fine. That means honoring your feelings enough to address them before they turn into something toxic that poisons everything you touch. Part 3. The right time to offer forgiveness. So, when should you forgive? And I'm going to be honest with you, there's no perfect formula for this, but there are some guidelines that can help you figure it out. And before I even get into it, I need you to know that there's going to be pressure from everywhere about this. People are going to have timelines for you. Your family is going to say, "It's been long enough. Just get over it." Your friends might tell you, "Girl, you need to let that go." Religious folks might quote scriptures at you about forgiveness. Self-help gurus will have their own opinions. But none of these people are living your life. None of them felt what you felt. So while you can listen to advice, ultimately, you have to trust your own process. First, you need to give yourself permission to feel everything you're feeling. Don't rush forgiveness because you think you're supposed to be over it by now. Don't force yourself to forgive because it's been a certain amount of time and you feel like you should have moved on. Process your emotions first. Cry about it. Be angry about it. Talk about it with people you trust. Write about it. Whatever you need to do to actually feel the hurt instead of burying it. And I mean really feel it. Not that thing we do where we acknowledge we're hurt for like 5 minutes and then immediately try to rationalize it away or make ourselves feel better. I'm talking about sitting in that discomfort. Letting yourself be sad without trying to fix it immediately. Letting yourself be angry without judging yourself for having those feelings. Your emotions are information. They're telling you something important. When you rush past them, you miss the message. Maybe the message is, this person doesn't respect you. Maybe it's, you need to set a boundary here. Maybe it's, this relationship isn't serving you anymore. But if you need to set a boundary, you're too busy trying to hurry up and forgive so you can feel spiritual or mature or whatever. You never get to hear what your emotions are trying to tell you. Because here's what happens when you try to forgive too quickly. You're just putting a band-aid on a wound that needs stitches. It looks fine on the surface, but underneath, it's still bleeding. And eventually that's going to come back up. You're going to explode at someone for something small because you never dealt with the big thing. You're going to have a breakdown over something that seems unrelated because you've been holding so much in. I've seen women who pride themselves on how quickly they forgive, how they never hold grudges, how they're always the bigger person, and on the outside, it looks like such strength. But then you really talk to them and they're exhausted. They're constantly anxious. They keep attracting the same kind of people who hurt them because they never actually processed why it hurts in the first place. They never learned the lesson. They just slapped forgiveness on it and moved on, only to end up in the same situation with a different person. Fast forgiveness is not always mature forgiveness. Sometimes it's just avoidance with good PR. So take your time. But also, and this is important, don't take so much time that you start building a home in your hurt. Don't get so comfortable in your victim story that you forget you have the power to change the narrative. Because here's the flip side. Some people take so long to forgive that their hurt becomes their identity. They've told the story so many times that now it's who they are. I'm the person this happened to. They bring it up in every conversation. They use it to explain everything about themselves. And at some point, they're no longer processing, they're performing. They're no longer healing, they're rehearsing. And I'm not judging this, I understand it. When something really terrible happens to you, sometimes that pain is the only thing that feels real. Sometimes it's the only thing that makes people pay attention to you. Sometimes it's the only way you know how to explain why you are the way you are. But staying there forever? That's not honoring your pain. That's letting your pain become a cage. There's a difference between taking the time you need to heal and taking up permanent residence in your wounds. One is wisdom. The other is self-sabotage. The right time to offer forgiveness is when you've processed the pain, but before you've let it turn into poison. It's when you can think about what happened without your heart racing. It's when you can acknowledge the hurt without it consuming you. It's when you realize that holding on to this is costing you more than letting it go. Here's how you know you're ready. You can talk about what happened without crying. Or if you do cry, it's not that raw, fresh pain anymore. It's more like a dull ache. You can see their name pop up somewhere and not immediately feel rage or sadness flood your system. You can imagine a future where this thing doesn't define you. You want peace more than you want to be right. You want freedom more than you want revenge. That's when you know. Not because someone told you it's time, not because you think you should be over it, but because something shifts inside you and you realize you're ready to put this down. Not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to not carry it anymore. And sometimes, honestly, the right time to forgive is when you're still hurting, when it's hard, when you don't feel like it. Because that's when forgiveness becomes a choice you're making for your future, not just a reaction to your feelings. This is the forgiveness that really transforms you. When you forgive from a place of strength, not weakness. When you forgive because you're choosing your peace, not because you're afraid of conflict. When you forgive while the wound is still tender, because you recognize that waiting for it to not hurt anymore means you might wait forever. Some hurts don't ever completely stop hurting. Some things people do to us leave permanent marks. And if you wait until it doesn't hurt at all to forgive, you'll be waiting your whole life. So sometimes you have to make the decision to forgive while it still stings, while you're still processing, while you're still figuring it out. Because forgiveness isn't always about feeling ready. Sometimes it's about being brave enough to do it anyway. Part 4. Forgiveness with boundaries. This is the part that changed my life, and I think it'll change yours too. You can forgive someone and still say, "You can't do that to me anymore." You can forgive someone and still say, "I need space from you." You can forgive someone and still say, "I forgive you, but I don't trust you." And trust has to be rebuilt over time, if I even choose to allow that. And let me tell you, when I first learned this, it was like someone turned the lights on in a dark room I'd been stumbling around in for years. Because I had been operating under the false belief that forgiveness meant everything goes back to how it was. That if I truly forgave someone, I had to let them back into my life the same way they were before. That holding boundaries meant I hadn't really forgiven them, and that belief kept me in toxic cycles for way too long. This is what mature forgiveness looks like. It's not weak, it's not holding grudges, it's wisdom, it's protection. It's you saying, "I released the anger, but I also released the access you had to hurt me again." Think about it like this. If someone breaks into your house, you might forgive them. You might genuinely let go of the anger and not wish them harm. But you're also going to change your locks. You're going to get a security system. You're going to make sure they can't break in again. Nobody would look at you changing your locks and say, "Well, you clearly haven't forgiven them if you're still protecting yourself." That would be ridiculous. But somehow when it comes to emotional boundaries, people expect you to just leave your doors wide open. Because some people in your life, they've earned boundaries. They've shown you through their actions that they cannot be trusted with certain parts of you. And that's okay. You don't have to cut them off completely if you don't want to, but you do have to protect yourself. And I want to be really specific about what this looks like, because I think people hear boundaries and they don't know what that actually means in practice. Boundaries are not walls. Walls keep everything out. Boundaries are more like filters. They let certain things in and keep certain things out based on what's healthy for you. Maybe that looks like forgiving your parent but limiting how much you share with them because they've used your vulnerability against you in the past. You still show up for holidays. You still have a relationship. But you're not telling them about your dating life anymore because every time you did, they criticized your choices. You're not sharing your career struggles because they always made you feel like you weren't doing enough. You forgive them for not being the parent you needed, but you also stop expecting them to be that parent. You adjust your expectations and your level of openness accordingly. Maybe it looks like forgiving your friend, but recognizing that y'all can't be as close as you used to be because they've proven they're not a safe space. You can still grab lunch occasionally. You can still wish them well, but you're not calling them when something major happens in your life anymore. You're not inviting them to intimate gatherings. You're not sharing your dreams and fears with them because they showed you they can't hold those things with care. And that's not punishment. That's just you being wise about who you give access to the tender parts of yourself. Maybe it looks like forgiving your ex but blocking them on everything because you know having access to each other isn't healthy. You've released the bitterness. You don't wish them harm. You genuinely hope they grow and do better. But you also know that every time you see their posts or they text you, it sets you back. It opens old wounds. It makes you question your decision to leave. So you remove the access, not out of hate, but out of self-preservation. And people are going to have opinions about this. They're going to say, but if you really forgave them, you'd. No. Stop right there. Forgiveness is between you and your peace. Nobody else gets to define what that looks like for you. The people pushing back on your boundaries are usually one of two types. Either they benefit from you not having boundaries, or they don't have boundaries themselves and your boundaries make them uncomfortable because it forces them to look at their own situation. But either way, their opinion doesn't matter more than your well-being. Someone might say, but family is family, you have to let it go completely. Okay, but they're not the ones dealing with the anxiety attacks every time that family member calls. Someone might say a real friend would give unlimited chances. Okay, but they're not the ones being repeatedly disappointed and hurt. Someone might say, you're being petty by blocking your ex. Okay, but they're not the ones who need to heal and move forward. The boundaries you set after forgiveness are not punishment. They're not revenge. They're protection. They're you being smart enough to learn from what happened instead of just moving on and acting like it didn't teach you anything. When someone shows you they're willing to hurt you, believe them. When someone shows you they can't respect your boundaries, believe them. When someone shows you they prioritize their needs over your well-being consistently, believe them, and then adjust accordingly. That's not unforgiveness. That's intelligence. That's emotional maturity. That's you valuing yourself enough to not keep putting yourself in positions to be hurt. And here's something else that's important. Boundaries after forgiveness also mean you get to change your mind about what level of relationship you want with someone. Just because you forgave them last year doesn't mean you have to maintain the same level of closeness forever. If you notice the same patterns emerging, if you feel that old resentment creeping back in, if the relationship stops serving you, you can adjust. You can create more distance. You can eventually decide no contact is better for you. Forgiveness isn't a contract that locks you into a relationship forever. It's a gift you give yourself, and part of that gift is the freedom to keep choosing what's best for you. Part 5. When forgiveness has limits. Let's talk about the limits of forgiveness because yes, forgiveness has limits and we need to be real about that. You do not have to keep forgiving someone who refuses to change. You do not have to keep forgiving someone who keeps doing the exact same thing and expecting you to just deal with it. You do not have to keep forgiving someone who is actively, intentionally, continuously hurting you. There's a difference between someone who made a mistake, genuinely apologized, and is trying to do better, versus someone who keeps making the same mistake over and over. At some point, it's not a mistake anymore. It's a choice. It's a pattern. And you have to recognize that. Forgiveness is not a free pass to keep disrespecting you. It's not a reset button they can hit every time they mess up. Real forgiveness requires real accountability. If someone is asking for your forgiveness, but they're not willing to acknowledge what they did, not willing to take responsibility, not willing to make any changes, that's not someone who deserves your forgiveness yet. That's someone who wants to escape the consequences of their actions. And I know this is hard, especially with people you love, especially with family, especially with people you've known your whole life. But you have to ask yourself, am I forgiving them because I want to heal? Or am I forgiving them because I'm afraid of what it means if I don't? Am I forgiving them because it's the right thing to do? Or am I forgiving them because I don't want to rock the boat? Am I forgiving them because they've earned it? Or am I forgiving them because I'm tired of fighting? Those are hard questions, but they're necessary. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to say, I forgive you for me, but I'm done with you for me too. Part 6. Forgiving yourself. And while we're talking about forgiveness, we have to talk about forgiving yourself. Because honestly, this might be the hardest one. We can extend grace to other people all day long. We can understand their circumstances, their upbringing, their struggles. We can say, well, they were going through something or they didn't know any better. But when it comes to ourselves, we're ruthless. We hold ourselves to impossible standards and then beat ourselves up when we don't meet them. How many of us are still beating ourselves up for things we did years ago How many of us are still carrying shame for mistakes we made when we were younger, when we didn't know better, when we were doing the best we could with what we had? How many of us are still punishing ourselves for staying too long, for ignoring the red flags, for believing someone when we shouldn't have? And it's not just the big things either. It's the little comments you made that you wish you could take back. It's the time you were too harsh with someone. It's the opportunities you didn't take because you were scared. It's the version of yourself you wish you'd been but weren't. We carry all of this like a backpack full of rocks, and we wonder why we're so exhausted all the time. I'll tell you what really gets me. It's when women beat themselves up for not leaving toxic situations sooner. I wasted so many years. I was so stupid. I should have known better. But here's what I need you to understand. You weren't stupid. You were hopeful. You were loyal. You were trying. You were invested. And the person who took advantage of those beautiful qualities, that's on them, not you. You have to extend the same grace to yourself that you're learning to give to others. Actually, no, you need to give yourself more grace than you give others because you're the one person you can never get away from. You're stuck with yourself for life, so you better learn to be kind to yourself. Think about how you talk to yourself in your head. Would you talk to your best friend that way? Would you talk to a child that way? Would you talk to a stranger that way? Probably not. But somehow we think it's okay to speak to ourselves with such cruelty, such contempt, such harshness. We call ourselves names we would never call anyone else. We replay our worst moments like highlight reels of our failures. Stop replaying your mistakes like they're defining you. Stop looking at your past self with disgust. That version of you was doing the best they could. They didn't have the wisdom you have now. They didn't have the healing you have now. They didn't have the perspective you have now. You know what that past version of you had? They had wounds they were trying to heal. They had fears they were trying to overcome. They had hopes they were trying to protect. They were navigating life with the tools they had at the time, and those tools might not have been the best, but they were doing their best with what they had access to. You can't judge your past self with your present knowledge. That's not fair. That's like getting mad at a 5-year-old for not being able to do algebra. They haven't learned it yet. They don't have the capacity yet. And your past self didn't have what you have now either. So stop holding them to standards they couldn't have possibly met. Forgive yourself for not knowing what you hadn't learned yet. Forgive yourself for trusting the wrong people. Forgive yourself for staying when you should have left. Forgive yourself for leaving when you should have fought harder. Forgive yourself for all of it. Forgive yourself for the times you were too much. For the times you weren't enough. For the times you said yes when you meant no. For the times you said no when you meant yes. For trying too hard. For not trying hard enough. For being messy and complicated and human. Forgive yourself for not protecting yourself the way you needed to be protected. For not speaking up when you needed to speak up. For speaking up when maybe you should have stayed quiet. For every imperfect decision you made while trying to figure out this impossible thing called life. And here's the thing about forgiving yourself. It's not about excusing your behavior. It's not about saying what you did was okay. It's about releasing the death grip of shame so you can actually learn and grow from it. Because you can't grow from a place of constant self-hatred. You just can't. Shame keeps you stuck. Shame keeps you small. Shame keeps you repeating the same patterns because you're so busy hating yourself for the last mistake that you can't focus on not making it again. Shame is not a teacher. It's a prison guard. When you forgive yourself, you create space to actually examine what happened without all the emotional charge. You can ask, what did I learn from this? Instead of, why am I so stupid? You can ask, how can I do better next time? Instead of, why do I always mess everything up? You can actually extract the lesson instead of just swimming in regret. And let me tell you something else. Holding on to self-hatred doesn't make you humble. It doesn't make you accountable. It doesn't make you a better person. It just makes you miserable. And miserable people? They can't show up fully for themselves or anyone else. They can't create the life they want. They can't become who they're meant to be. Because they're too busy punishing themselves for who they used to be. Self-forgiveness is not selfish. It's necessary. It's the foundation of growth. It's how you break cycles. It's how you become someone different. You can't hate yourself into a better version of yourself. That's never worked for anyone, ever. So how do you actually move forward? How do you live in a place of forgiveness without being naive? How do you protect your peace without becoming hard and closed off. It starts with being intentional. You have to decide every day that you're going to choose peace over being right. You have to decide that you're going to choose healing over holding grudges. You have to decide that you're going to protect yourself without building walls so high that nothing good can get in either. It means paying attention to patterns. It means trusting your gut when something feels off. It means having hard conversations early instead of waiting until you're so resentful that the conversation becomes an explosion. It means being honest about what you can and can't handle from people. And look, some relationships aren't going to survive your growth, and that's okay. Some people are going to be upset when you start setting boundaries. Some people are going to accuse you of being unforgiving when really, you're just done being disrespected. Let them be upset. Your peace is not negotiable. The goal is not to become cold. The goal is to become wise, to become discerning, to become someone who can forgive without forgetting the lesson, to become someone who can extend grace without extending unlimited access to hurt you. You're allowed to forgive and still walk away. You're allowed to forgive and still protect yourself. You're allowed to forgive and still expect better. Those things are not contradictory. Those things are maturity. So extend forgiveness when it serves your peace. Set boundaries to protect your future. And remember that the person you become on the other side of learning how to forgive wisely is going to be so much stronger, so much healthier, and so much more at peace than the person who either never forgives or forgives without wisdom. You deserve that peace. You deserve that freedom. Now go get it.